Hello and welcome to the Cost of Living newscast from Kent County Council. In this episode, our journalist Elizabeth Matsangu is speaking to Principal Trading Standards Officer Tammy Carroll and Peter Habert from the Property Ombudsman Service about the information landlords and letting agents should be providing and what to do if you come across a problem. For more advice and tips, click the subscribe button below, follow Kent County Council's public protection or business advice accounts on social media, or sign up to receive scam alerts or business bulletins by email. Links below.
Hi, Tammy and Peter. Thank you for joining us today. So, Tammy, when someone is considering a new tenancy or they're looking at renting, what information should they make sure that the landlord or the letting agent gives to them?
My advice to a prospective tenant, before you even think of taking out a tenancy agreement, would be, first of all, to consider the person or business that you're dealing with. Every person or business has to be transparent so you know and understand who you're dealing with. For example, if you find someone on a website, you would expect to see their name and business address. And if they're a company, they would give a company registration number. And then on the government website, .gov.uk, you can find on there Companies House, where I would advise that you put in that company number to ensure that that company number represents the business who you're dealing with. So that's where I would start with any dealings when you're considering a tenancy agreement. Next, what a letting agent, a landlord, or a property management company must supply to anybody that looks at their business. So first of all, there are permitted fees. There are only certain fees now that they're permitted to put on a tenancy agreement, and I will list them. First of all, the permitted fees is rent, deposits, payments in the event of a default of a rent, failure to make that rent in 14 days, varying a rental agreement which must not exceed £50, if the tenant terminates before the end of a fixed term. A permitted fee is allowed to be council tax, the provision of utilities, so for example gas, electricity, TV licence, and lastly communication services. They're the only fees that they are permitted to use. Every other fee is a prohibited fee. Now, all of them fees must be displayed everywhere that the landlord, letting agent, or property management are doing their business. So that is on a website, within every business premises, and if they're using a third-party website, there must be either them fees listed on that third-party website or a link that would take you to their website where you would find them fees. So for example, if they're advertising on Rightmove, let's say, you would have a link there which would take you to their website, or they will list them fees on there. The next aspect is if they're a letting agent or a property management who are actually holding clients' money, they must be part now of a client's money protection scheme, which are regulated. And the reason for that is because then a third party and a regulated business is actually holding people's monies if you pay any deposits, etc., so that the landlord and the letting agent doesn't keep hold of your money, somebody else does. So they have to be a member of that protection scheme, and for you to find out that, they're given a certificate, and that certificate again must be displayed at everywhere they're doing their business. What I would say is if they're not holding any monies, it doesn't mean that every letting agent, property manager and landlord has to be part of a client money protection scheme, but if they are holding people's money, then they do. And then finally, they must be part of a redress scheme. Now again, like the client money protection, there are a few that are regulated that you can become part of that redress scheme, and that's to say that if there's an issue between a tenant and a letting agent, this is a third party, the redress scheme can help and manage with that. And again, they need to name the redress scheme that they are part of. So again, that must be displayed.
And what happens if this information hasn't been provided?
Trading standards have several enforcement powers and sanctions that are available to them under the Tenant Fees Act. And that can range from business advice through to fixed penalty notices for those, for example, if they are not displaying their fees, they're not a member of a client money protection scheme or indeed a redress scheme, and that can go all the way through to prosecution.
Peter, what does the Property Ombudsman Service do?
The Property Ombudsman, we basically deal with complaints between consumers and letting agents. We've been doing this for 30 years, and we have several tools on the website to help people do this, such as our code of practice. So we generally resolve disputes, and there's all types of issues that tenants could be facing, whether it's from the marketing of the property, from the letting agent in the first bit, to the actual part of checking in, to the actual management throughout the tenancy, to the end of tenancy issues such as deposits and things like that. So we can look at the full spectrum of issues that could arise in terms of the service provided by letting agents. And obviously our code of practice sets the standards for what we'd expect those services to be throughout. So so for tenants, if they have an issue with their letting agents, obviously they can come to us if there is some problems, and we can obviously look at those.
And how can this service help if someone has an issue with their landlord or with the letting agent?
We can help in a number of ways if a tenant contacts us. We can help at the front end by providing advice and signposting, because sometimes they're relatively straightforward issues, and sometimes the issues tenants face it's just a bit of education that they need about their rights, their responsibilities, what the landlord should be doing under a tenancy agreement, all those sorts of things. So we have a front end service which can be contacted by phone or email, or there's a self-service portal on our website with guidance on where those relatively straightforward educational issues can be resolved. For the more serious issues, obviously we can conduct investigations into that. So to do that, tenants will need to go and find our complaints form, fill in that complaints form, give us some idea of the issues that they want us to look into, and then we can look at that and then go and actually ask for evidence from the agency and then conduct an investigation if we need to. So we can help in a number of ways like that. Now, as a result of our investigation, if we find that there's some shortcomings from the agent, we can make financial awards, which we call redress. And the point of redress is to put the tenant back into the position they would have been had the incident not actually occurred. So while we can award up to £25,000 in compensation, in reality, what happens with most of the lettings cases is the average award is about £500, because it looks at distress and inconvenience and elements of financial loss. But we can also help as well through the actual learning through our case studies. So when we see issues and when we see how agents could behave better, these are things we can factor into our code of practice, which again helps agents to try and improve standards with the ultimate goal of actually preventing issues from arising in the first place. So we help in a number of ways.
So if an individual does have a dispute with their landlord or the letting agent, at what point should they contact the Property Ombudsman Service?
The point at which to contact the Ombudsman is actually after you've raised the issues with the agent in the first instance. It's more of a point of principle here that if we all make mistakes in life, and actually you want the opportunity, if you have made a mistake, to try and put things right. So it's only fair and reasonable for issues to be raised with the agent in the first instance. That gives them the opportunity to investigate it, and to, if they need to put things right, then they can do that. Or if it's just a bit of advice or guidance that actually the tenant's seeking, they can do that as well. If it does turn into a formal complaint, firstly, the best advice is to make sure these are always conducted in writing, so you have a good trail of it. And secondly, when the agent receives that complaint, that should instigate their internal complaints handling process. And that means they will have to conduct an investigation into all of the issues raised, and obviously provide any sort of resolution which they think is reasonable under the circumstances. Now, if that internal procedure doesn't resolve matters, then at that point, consumers can contact ourselves. And as I said in the answer to the previous question, we can look at things. They need to complete our complaint form. And once they've done that and provide us with additional evidence, that gives us the go-ahead to consider it for investigation. And obviously after that point, we will request information from the agent, and that will eventually go to the adjudicator, who will look through all the issues and make decisions on those issues before reaching a final decision. So that's the way to do it. But the bottom line is really, if you've got an issue with your agent, it's only right and proper to tell them and give them the opportunity to fix things first.
We can't take action without your reports. We need everyone who comes across them to speak up and report scams and criminals. Even if you've seen a scam many times before, your reporting can help us target our resources and warn and protect others. If you have information on doorstep criminals, counterfeit, fake or illegal goods, illicit tobacco, loan sharks or underage sales, contact the charity Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. You'll stay 100% anonymous, always. To report scams and get advice on consumer issues, call the Citizens Advice Consumer Helpline on 0808 223 1133. Thank you for helping us protect Kent from scammers and criminals.